I am in my car right now and it's raining, but I wanted to do a very quick disclaimer before we get started with this video. This video was thought of and filmed a long time ago, and we intended to post it and let you guys see it much sooner, but things just got in the way and didn't work out. So this is just a quick heads up that certain things you're going to be seeing in this video are going to be outdated. So we might be mentioning certain things that are kind of old news or not completely accurate as of now in, January 2019. Yeah, just go into this video knowing that and understanding that, and you will still have a good time. We still want to have this conversation with you guys and look back on a very dearly beloved franchise. But another quick thing to add into this is the fact that it was posted all over Instagram. I don't recall the exact date, but Mattel, the official Mattel social media pages, did post and confirm that Ever After High is donezo for the time being. They gave some statement, if I can find it, I'll post it here, stating that Ever After High is, closing its chapter or its storybook for now. So they have confirmed there will be no definitive new releases moving forward until further notice. So that is the new information that we're going to give going into this video. So let's just look back on the lovely, enchanting fairy tale that was Ever After High.
Hey guys, welcome to Toy Chat. This is Max.
And Sang.
As you'll notice, we have someone joining us today who has not been present for a while. We're welcoming back Autumn for a bit. She's back in town for a while.
So we're doing something a little different today, and we are going to be talking about Ever After High. It's been quite a while since we have spoken about Ever After High.
Yeah, it has been a really long time. The most recent video I see on our channel that has anything Ever After High related was 7 months ago.
Wow.
So,
yeah, it's been a long time. So I think the whole point of this is, talk about Ever After High, what we liked about it, give you, if you are not familiar with Ever After High, a little brief summary what it is and was.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically just going to be an open panel discussion, structured kind of like a podcast. I'm warning you now. It's going to be a long video, but hello, welcome to our channel.
If you like the sound of our voices, welcome.
Yeah, just leave it on in the background. And I made a post asking on Instagram, which if you're not following my Instagram, you should, at Hexcellence. But I posed, I put up a post asking you guys what you wanted discussed in this video. And so we're going to go over those as well. Some people brought up some really awesome things and topics that we can cover that I'm excited to talk about. Yeah, I mean, it's been so long since we've done an Ever After High thing. I actually wouldn't be surprised if there's some subscribers we have at this point who aren't really interested in Ever After High or maybe aren't even familiar with it. I have no idea.
But yeah, we started out doing Monster High and Ever After High reviews and discussions and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's about time we talk about the subject. So if you're unfamiliar with Ever After High is a doll line from Mattel. It is a spin-off of their popular Monster High Dolls series. It was released by Mattel in July 2013. Keep in mind, United States is really large, so by Christmas it's on the shelves. So that's when we first saw Ever After High, was during the holidays when me and Autumn worked retail.
And if you want that whole story, I'll link in the description our first video ever, where we talk about like how we first got into Ever After High and our experience with that.
So Ever After High is based on fairy tales and folklore, fantasy. So like Monster High, it's students who, in this case, go to this enchanted school based on fairy tale stories. So you got characters like Apple White, who is daughter of Snow White, and you got Raven Queen, who is the daughter of the Evil Queen. Legacy.
They were descendants before descendants was a thing.
Yeah,
just
definitely.
Putting it out there.
And to promote it, they released a web series which became really popular.
Which
and
was our heart for a good minute.
Yeah, definitely what attracted us to these dolls, because we got attached to these characters that they released on YouTube, and this web series was really high production.
It was so much higher of a tier than like the Monster High series. It was like, honestly, the animation quality was better.
It was very unique too.
It was the story. It had like a story and characters you cared about, especially towards the beginning. Like there was like True Heart's Day. I rewatched that so many times. It was really one of the things where like it was really that grade of kids entertainment where it was easy for older people to enjoy as well, because it was just so visually beautiful. It was essentially like Flash animation, but it had this richness to it, and they got
they made it look like almost like drawn style, like
they had these very like lush.
It reminded me of like those paper cutout dolls,
paper
right?
dolls.
It did. It was a little more fluid than that, but it did have that style, and they had these like lush watercolor backgrounds. It felt a lot artsier than your average like low budget cartoon.
I couldn't even touch the Monster High web series, so Ever After High, I was into it. It like made me laugh.
We got into the show first. If you watch our very first video ever, the show was what sparked our interest in the dolls. But it's essentially, it spawned several lines over the years, and something that really made the dolls stand out was the fact that, particularly in the early releases, they had, I like to use the phrase full articulation, but essentially it meant they had 11 points of articulation, which we'll get deeper into that because people commented about that, and I think that's something very important and unique that they offered to the industry, because I think that's part of what interested us too.
It was a big deal because we were just so used to Barbies.
Yeah.
Growing up. I mean, we also had just gotten into Monster High, or was that just me?
I didn't feel like I was really into like the monster aspect of the dolls early on, but I was after. But so it's these fairy tale characters that go to school, and they are separated by two categories: royals, who are like the heroes and the royal family characters from these stories, and there are the rebels, who are essentially the villains or the bad guys who go to this school, and they're basically rebelling against their stories, for some of them.
Which actually, for a minute, I want to just go off on that for 1 second. There was actually some debate about what it was that actually separated royals from rebels, because it was kind of confusing for certain characters why they were labeled as a royal versus a rebel, because there were some people who were like, oh, well, the royals are all the princesses and their sons and daughters of like the main characters and the heroes, but that didn't add up because you had characters like Cedar. And technically there were rebel princesses, stuff like that. So the theory that I developed is that I think a consistency you can find in royal versus rebel is that the royals want their written future, their happily ever after, like what's written into their story, as where the rebels don't. Like the rebels, their story written, they're supposed to follow is like not a happy one. Yeah. And so they don't want to follow it. Yeah.
Who would?
So that was the concept, and it really reflects on the dolls as well. end up picking a side early on. Like me and Max were like, oh, you be royals and I'll be rebels, and we'll collect these dolls. But we just ended up collecting them all
It was
eventually.
a very interesting theme, like Apple versus Raven, where Apple's like, how can you go against the story? You're gonna ruin it for everybody. And then Raven's like, well, should we be following a story just because it was handed down to us?
I think it introduces actually something, if you want to read deeper into it, it does introduce something kind of fascinating where you basically have this situation where there's these characters who they're happy with, the story that's written out for them. Like, you're gonna live happily ever after, and marry a prince, and live in a castle, and you obviously, you hear about that and you want that, and then you have characters like Raven and the Rebels who are not supposed to have happy stories, and it's understandable that they don't want that, but in fighting that and rebelling against that, they're basically threatening the possibility of this happy ending. So there were a lot of people who were ragging on Apple, which granted she was extremely selfish in the series, but it makes sense when you think about it that the happy endings of these characters,
I would say Apple was very naive. I think that's, she's been spoon-fed her destiny since, a child, so she's very naive to like other people's problems. So if you want to watch the series, it's still on YouTube.
They're reposting a lot of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of it
is new.
Ever After High released several new doll lines per year. So they had the signature line, which is the characters from the show, and then the big one that they released, after that was Legacy Day, which was the big story arc from the first portion of the web series.
Yeah, so Legacy Day was essentially when all the characters would, have to sign their name into the Storybook of Legends, which essentially means they are agreeing to, their predetermined destiny, to basically follow their parents' footsteps and live out essentially the same fairy tale as their parents. And the rebel cause was, of course, fighting against that because some of them did not have happy endings written in for themselves. And Legacy Day was a gorgeous line. I loved Legacy Day.
Yeah, definitely looking back, we were very amazed that these really high-end dolls were being released from, Mattel, or in general, like on the shelves, they really popped because they're in these gorgeous gowns and really shimmery metallic
It always felt like you're getting your money's worth.
Oh yeah, I mean for $25, now looking back, that was a steal, to be honest.
It's ironic now because there's especially when we
what they get away with for $25 nowadays. But
it's really funny when you think about it how high our standards were set because of Ever After High.
Yeah.
In terms of articulation and detailing. And
the hair were styled, you had portions were
curls, the corkscrew curls, and the
portion of hair was tied up, and other parts were Yeah,
it was really crazy too because if you go all the way back to the original lines of signature dolls, especially the first wave, which was Apple White, Raven Queen, Madeline Hatter, and Briar Beauty, the amount of detail, the detail on them was really crazy. Every single one of them had so many accessories. They had a necklace, a bracelet, rings. They had rings.
A head thing.
They had headbands and crowns.
Maybe a belt.
A book and purses and
it comes with a key, right? It came with a key.
It came with a key and the brushes and a stand to display the doll.
A little booklet.
And the backdrop looked like this page out of a fairy tale book.
And the bookmarks that where you take it out and it's little, you can use it as a bookmark, and if you open it up there was it's such a far cry from
where we're now.
It's crazy. If you actually look back, as much as people rag on the changes, it was very above and beyond the industry standards.
Yeah.
It really was.
It drew us in.
Yeah, so 10 to 20 million was allocated for development of Ever After High when it first started, and it was which believe it or not, in the big scheme of things, for a corporation like Mattel, that's actually not that much. And it was essentially intended as a spin-off of Monster High.
Yeah, they even brought over a character from Monster High, Cupid, over
It's
to
a good choice.
Ever After High to help promote Ever After High, and she looks gorgeous. And the signature lines were so pretty. It's just remembering the signature lines every time they introduce a new character. Like either you saw them first from the web series or they just brought them out as doll form. It was just this huge hype of like within the community where like, you found this at Walmart? Like I need to check at Walmart. Or Justice. Justice was a huge
Remember
one.
Justice? The Justice. When just Sang and I would like walk
These two men just walks in like looking at their shells and then just walking out in disappointment.
Just walking in and walking out. Yeah,
I was almost never there.
Autumn was just like, nah.
I believe it was like wave 3, like Cedar Wood and
Lizzie Hearts, which
Lizzie.
actually what's really crazy, the original like legit release of Lizzie Hearts, like I feel like that was a super limited release. Cedar too, actually original Cedar, but Lizzie Hearts even more so.
Yeah.
Like you would have had a really hard time getting the original Lizzie Hearts with all her like accessories in the original box, because when they started re-releasing, so it actually wasn't that far into the series that they started re-releasing certain dolls. I don't know when or what year that started happening, but there were changes to the packaging.
That's a bit later on. We'll try to focus on like the signature line because there's so many lines. There's like Hatastic was really great.
Fantastic.
What else was some of the favorite ones?
Thronecoming.
Thronecoming,
Autumn and
yeah.
I are split on this opinion, but I loved Thronecoming. That was like the prom gown line. The Cupid in that line is stunning. For a long time, that Cupid was my favorite Ever After High doll, point blank. Like even though you don't like it, it's too much for you. You have to agree. There's
it's
so
so
much
pretty.
detail. There's so much like detail put into those dolls. It's insane. Like then the fabric they used, it felt nice, it looked nice. They had layers. There were so many layers.
Getting Fairest was like their slumber party.
There's so many
I loved getting Fairest.
Yeah, there was
that would
some-
be a me one.
Yeah.
Like early on, you'll know if you watched our first video, like there's some, like I skipped out on some because I only like the detailed ones, and Autumn mainly like simple ones, but there's like some now I look back and I'm like, oh, I should have gotten all of that line.
And
Like,
Sang just got them all.
Sang did get them all.
You also have to you have stuff to look forward to as well. Like along with these dolls, like they release like a movie or like a special with it. Like Thronecoming had a movie.
So, like you get invested in the story and the characters first, and then like, oh my gosh.
The Thronecoming movie was really good too. I feel like what's probably your favorite Ever After High movie?
So it's kind of hard to look back. Like I don't remember them quite as clearly now as I did then.
Yeah, I remember Thronecoming was really good.
Thronecoming was really good. I remember.
Spring Unsprung was okay.
Yeah.
Way to Wonderland was really good. Actually, they were all great. I
For
personally think,
kids shows, they were really great.
yeah, especially it's crazy too. Looking back how recent it was, I loved Dragon Games,
Yeah, Dragon's good.
especially with the scandalous kiss.
Yeah.
There were articles about it. And everything.
Yeah, and then of course there's were like doll lines that they never actually made anything for. Like it was still really great. Like Fairest on Ice was really hard to get. It was a Walmart pretty much. Like
unofficial Walmart exclusive.
There were Sugar Coated.
I love sugar coated candy.
That was a very
Baking
max.
candies.
Very max.
Yeah.
They had some budget ones like Mirror Beach.
For the longest time, Ever After High didn't have. budget
Yeah,
dolls.
we talked about how like they didn't have anything equivalent to like the Monster High, because we at that point we were collecting Monster High as well, and the budget ones were nice. But yeah, like we're like, wow, like Ever After High is like such like really detailed. I can't imagine doing a budget version.
Ironic, fast forwarding to the now, but yeah, like they didn't do budget Ever After High dolls for quite a while. Like they didn't even introduce Mirror Beach and all that until several. I mean, that's the thing is, I think for a long time we originally just viewed it as it was like a deluxe doll brand, pretty much. That wasn't really intended for very young children. Yeah.
Maybe that was the issue.
What was crazy is that I feel like at that point, there was a little bit of something was changing even that early on, because with that wave, especially if you look at that trio, any of you who are collectors, if you remember specifically the trio of Lizzie, Cedar, and Dexter, those three were hard to find, especially when they first came out. And actually, Dexter Charming, like the original release of Dexter Charming, is one of the most valuable Ever After High dolls.
Wow.
Now, because yeah, he sells, if you look him up on eBay, especially the inbox ones, they sell for like $60+ plus. It's pretty crazy.
So during that time, I don't know if they were part of Wave 2 or 3.
They were Wave 3, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Wave 2
but
was
around that time, they also released a 2-pack. It was another 2-pack, and it was Poppy and Holly O'Hare. And they were very pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, like these dolls, like, they spent so much like money on these dolls. Like, Holly had so much hair. And if you actually look back and you actually compare the dolls as they went on, her hair got shorter and shorter, and less material
I'll
was
never
used.
move on from my first Holly.
Oh, I know.
First Holly's stunning.
Yeah.
Her shoes, her out, everything was just
Everything.
yeah.
And so after that point, things start changing, and this is where we got the first taste of kind of cutbacks.
There was a shift.
There was a shift. I mean, yes. So at this time, I remember very vividly, they announced a couple new dolls.
Specifically, Kitty Cheshire. Kitty Cheshire was the first leaked
Yes.
one. Yeah, so one of the things that made, Ever After High dolls very unique, even, dating back to earlier on, was their original trademark was that the dolls, all had these round, flat faces. That was essentially made them look a lot like,
Porcelain.
classic porcelain dolls, which was very different and unique,
Yeah.
in modern times.
And then we had like huge discussion like how they're gonna do Kitty, because she always had that smile on her. Is they're not gonna make it, and the community was very divided on it. I think some people really liked her smile, and some people thought it was kind of creepy.
I feel like she was the first release where there was like a negative fan response when pictures start, like even some people, I won't call anybody out, but there were some people on Instagram who like had historically loved everything Ever After High, and this was the first time I started seeing a lot of negative buzz around an upcoming character. And yeah, for those of you who know of Kitty's, initial release, there were a lot of things about her that were just very different.
The biggest one was her cuffs. Like she had cuffs on the show.
Oh, the fur.
Well, so here's the thing. There was a controversy over that
Yes.
because Ever After High, the official Ever After High Instagram and all the social media, the promotional images they were posting of her, she had the arm warmers.
Yeah.
And it turned out the finalized version of the doll did not.
It just had a bracelet.
Yeah, and I mean, just for a brief preface, generally speaking, what happens with it's all toys pretty much, is obviously when they're developing these toys early on and they're taking these promotional pictures, it will not necessarily be the final like product that you see on shelves, which that's just an industry thing.
Yeah.
But I personally think when you get to the point of doing these widespread like promotions for it, especially if it's something as noticeable as like a giant accessory that's on both arms, like that's iffy. That's a little bit problematic. And there was a big backlash over it. Like people were commenting like, why doesn't it come with these? Why doesn't it come with these? I heard there were people who wrote like formal complaints.
We had come to expect a certain standard.
I think our standards were so high at that point too.
The other big shift in things was they changed the packaging as well. With Kitty, they changed the packaging. It's no longer this storybook box.
It was still a storybook box, but it had turned into this plastic dome packaging that was flat instead of curved, where they basically made it look like a book spine, like the original Ever After High packaging. They changed it where it still kind of looked like that, but it was like compacted, flatter.
It was smaller, so it could have fit on the shelves, and it wasn't like it was more like cereal box shape.
Do you remember the days of us keeping all our boxes?
Yes, I did.
Another thing, there were so many different things about Kitty, like her hair, she had like these short little pigtails in the doll, and she had this like long, curly, wavy hair in the show.
Yeah.
There were also a lot of differences in the colors. They used almost no paint on her accessories. Like, because in the show, you'll see she has like brown fur around her neck and the bells and the little, cat bells and stuff like that. It was just a solid color
Gray.
piece
It was gray.
that was not even the right color. Yeah. And so everyone was like, what's going on?
Rosabella is next.
There was a huge gap before Rosabella came out, but I think she was formally part
I
of
think
the
at this
trio with
point-
Kitty and Duchess.
At this point, Mattel was releasing them no longer in waves. They was just sporadic.
It wasn't as sequenced as before.
Yeah. But yeah, so the next characters was Alistair and then Bunny, and they were like a lover.
And that was when I think people started noticing at that point. A discussion started in the community.
The whole jacket debacle.
Yeah, where it was kind of just like, ooh, like there's something going on with this line. Like there's like things, like there was a general, I think there was a general sense of, I'll put it kindly, there was a general sense of like lessening detail that people were noticing. And there started rumors of, you know, if the budget was cut for the development of these, especially because we started frequently seeing differences between the promo images and what the final product of the doll. Do you remember the debacle over Rosabella's belt?
Yeah. So it was so funny
That too,
because
yeah.
like some pictures she had it and some pictures she didn't. And then when we finally got the doll, we were all so worried that we won't get her belt. I know.
We got the belt version, but
later on, when they re-released her, she no longer had the belt. And when Alistair came out, he had a jacket and a shirt underneath. Unlike Dexter, who they're all separate pieces, as well as Hunter, Alistair's whole top part is just one piece.
You just Velcro it off.
And
Yeah.
he was by far one of the cheapest looking dolls that, maybe the cheapest
Yeah.
looking that had been released at that point.
Yeah, and his pants were pretty
Just
much
a
just
solid-
shorts. They were shorts. I mean, they didn't go down to his ankles, so that was misleading. But yeah.
We customized our Alistairs and made
Oh no!
them
At this
cute.
point, like we're hardcore, like change everything. I remember when Darling Charming came out, and she's so pretty on the show. She's so different in doll form compared to the show. She's very cute and like innocent early on the show, and then the doll was very
Like,
woman,
like seductive, vampy kind of face. She had a beautiful face mold.
Yeah,
Gorgeous face mold. Yeah.
But I remember her hair was really different because she had this very big, you know, Marie Antoinette, like big poof in the show, and then it's just like tied back on the doll.
It's just flat.
So what we
hair,
did, like
pretty
I know,
much.
like I changed it and I made a big poof for my Instagram and people loved it, and like her little headpiece was her head tiara thing.
We
was
had
not-
to recolor.
Yeah, we painted. It was like our first time like customizing these dolls to make it look like the show. Gingerbread House came out.
That was another one where there was a very noticeable cut because the original promos of Ginger had, I want to say, a necklace, or there was some kind of accessory that was like a different color that was more detail, and they removed it.
Faye Belle Thorne came out in 2015 as well. She was released along with like Rosabella. I remember that. And she was very pretty, but again, we're so used to how detailed the show version was. Seeing the doll version was kind of little like very disappointing.
This is another instance where it felt like, I guess the entirety of the budget, I guess understandably, was going to the face molds, because again, Faye Belle had a beautiful face mold and hair, but yeah, her
Oh, and then
outfit-
yeah, like she had like these really fancy like eyeshadow, but they only appeared on one side of her face on the doll form, but it's both on. Yeah, so it was strange because like at this point, all the dolls came out after the show counterpart, so it's a double like blow to us. You know, they released, you know, Farah, Good Fairy, you know, Michelle Mermaid, Michelle Mermaid, Nina Thumbell, and Jillian Beanstalk.
We're starting to get into one of the ones we reviewed on this channel.
Yeah, and Melody Piper. So that's pretty much all the signature ones, but there was a lot of things that was going on during this time, and I think part of the cutback was due to the Disney license being expired, and they were not able to obtain it, and that license went to
Hasbro.
So essentially what happened on, I have the exact date, on January 1st, 2015, something very crushing happens to Mattel, and that was that they lost the license to Disney Princess, which essentially meant that they could no longer produce Disney Princess toys. So essentially, Disney Princess dolls, like, you know, the major mainstream ones you saw in the market prior to that, were all produced by Mattel. So Mattel was, of course, getting a huge cut of that revenue. Disney Princess was a multi-$100 million, you know, industry. And so that was a very crushing blow to Mattel, and there was a lot of speculation, and I think what ties into this is the fact that the Disney Princess license was transferred from Mattel to Hasbro, and Hasbro is arguably the lead competitor of Mattel, and I definitely think that sent a little bit of a signal, the fact that the license was essentially handed to a direct competitor. You know, there was a lot of speculation, you know, you can find different sources online, different articles on the whole thing, but there was quite a bit of speculation that a major factor in Mattel losing the ownership of Disney Princess was the fact, first of all, that Ever After High existed, that they essentially had produced their own fairy tale princess themed brand that was completely separate and exclusive from Disney Princess. You know, and it would be understandable that Disney may have felt at a certain point that Mattel was putting too much focus on their own fairy tale princess brand and not enough on Disney Princess.
Well, you definitely see it during like the final days of Mattel owning the Disney brand.
Yeah.
Because some of like their versions of, like, say, Elsa and Anna didn't really compare to what Hasbro ended up doing with the same characters.
Yeah. Well, coincidentally, that very same year, and I'm sure both Sang and Autumn can remember the emotional text conversation we had about this, there were leaked images, which, by the way, if you want to see a more comprehensive history of this, I will also link in the description our original reactions to the Monster High reboot. But essentially, I'm pretty certain it was the same year, 2015. It was either 2015, 2016. It was in that zone. So it was not long after the loss of the Disney Princess license.
We were starting to worry about Mattel as a company.
Yeah. Where essentially, you know, as I'm sure some of you might know, you know, there were a lot of leaks online of upcoming Monster High and Ever After High dolls. And they looked very, very, very different from the other dolls up to that point, primarily in the fact that they were introducing a whole slew of new face molds. And there are a lot of people who like to say that Ever After High didn't formally have a reboot, that it was more, you know, Monster High had more of a formal reboot because even the series itself, the animation, everything kind of, you know, acted like it was starting from scratch. Ever After High didn't so much, it was mainly just the dolls. And, you know, essentially they had these new face molds with bright smiley faces. The size of the heads was also shrunken down.
Yeah.
And it was a change that a lot of people had reactions to.
It was very strange because, like, what attracted us to Ever After High was kind of like their face molds and their clothing. They were like Monster High with their reboot. They were like more natural looking, I guess. Small eyes without like that huge mascara and like eyeshadows and like really like deep lipstick. Like the Ever After High characters became a bit more youthful looking.
This might be kind of petty, but it's like if I wanted a boring looking doll, I could have just bought a Barbie though.
I mean, Barbie withstand the storm for all these years because they were able to reinvent itself. Because around this time, they were re-releasing Apple, White, Raven, Queen, and all these other characters with the new faces
and missing accessories.
Yeah, it was missing accessories. Yeah. You know, like you see these commercials, and then the dolls you buy are different. If you look at Nina Thumbale, and you have her standing next to Apple White, if you bought her from the very beginning, they look really different. It's just Apple's so different. Her shoes are like Apple shoes are painted, and her hair is really done nicely, and like there's these really nice curls.
Yeah.
And Nina is just like this one curl, like they tried kind of, and then just a big poof.
I'd already stopped collecting at this point.
Yeah, it's just it's and it's the same price. It's like $20. Like you don't get a stand with her.
The stands.
We
Yeah.
complain so much about stands on the show.
Yeah, I mean, I think it got to a point where it was very obvious there was a change
Yeah.
in the budget. And it was very clear. And I think that, you know, it's, you know, people could definitely tell, you know, I mean, obviously Mattel was losing, obviously, a ton of revenue just purely out of losing this Disney Princess license. And it was clear that, you know, I think there had to be this reorganization within the company. It was also, I don't know exactly how recently, but I also know Mattel got a new CEO within the past few years.
Right.
So there was a lot of structural changes going on. And I think that's the thing we have to keep in mind too, for the people who are just like angry at Ever After High changes. You know, a lot of this was out of the original creator, the brand's control. They're this parent
and
company.
obviously we're not the same demographic as the people they are targeting. You know, someone who collected Ever After High in 2013 might not be the same, like these kids not be the same interest they have when
teenagers don't, modern day teenagers like don't really care about dolls so much. Like,
well,
they
I'm
want,
saying
they want
teenagers,
technology,
I mean,
they
it's
want
preteens and
preteens. Yeah, and I think that was
grade
Monster
school,
High.
yeah.
That was Monster High and Ever After High's demographic was
Yeah.
more like the teenage and, you know,
I don't think it's teenagers, to be honest.
like preteen, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there was a time where dolls were marketed to teenagers, young teenagers, like brats and stuff like that.
Kids nowadays play with smartphones and electronics, so it's definitely harder for these kids to stay interested in these dolls, and maybe the private sales weren't that great.
Yeah, if you fast forward to today, another relevant thing that happened to them was this past year. It was the first year that Ever After High had zero at all presence or even a coinciding release for New York Comic Con. Again, things start getting very speculative at this point, and also, which by the way, even if you actually try to look it up and research it, like you're going to be hard pressed to find like accurate information and details. But there were a ton of rumors swirling that that essentially Ever After High had been demoted into a quote unquote what people were referring to as a toy box brand, meaning it basically wasn't considered a core brand of Mattel anymore. And honestly, I do think some type of shift along those lines did occur. And the main reason I think that is because if you look into pretty much any major retailer nowadays in the US anyway, the big like sections they had for Ever After High, they're gone. They're completely gone. And also the most recent Ever After High releases, the ones we discussed in the Collector's Corner video that were coming out for 2017, I forget the name of the line, it was like Back to School or whatever.
Yeah.
They ended up being exclusive to, in the US anyway, to the Mattel shop online and like the
actual like
shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a slow burn. Like it was slowly like just disappearing. It wasn't like this is our plan for Ever After High. This is it, guys. It's more like okay, slowly they're taking off the shelves.
Slowly, less details are appearing.
Yeah, no presence at Comic-Con or these other conventions. Netflix had a contract with them, and then that expired, and then there was no new content, new episodes. There wasn't like a finale or anything like that. They left off on a cliffhanger.
And it's definitively just they're over. There's been no new information released.
They talked about a Monster High and Ever After High crossover thing that ended up not happening. I mean, Mattel kind of released this kind of like storyboard idea for what the crossover would have been like. They finally released a book recently, which we didn't read. But
they finally did release, you know, for a while they did this weird thing where they were acting like it was maybe still going to be a thing, where they were doing promotional images of Monster High and Ever After High characters together. You know, for a while they showed certain little teasers and stuff of it, and they were promoting it as, I think, like the hidden movie or the lost movie or whatever, and ultimately it just ended up receiving a book. There was, however, one thing was made canon in the series was there was a hidden scene at the end of the Boo York movie where it showed, what was the alien character's name?
Astra?
Yeah, where Astronova, I guess we didn't watch this movie, but Astronova.
They didn't make it available on Netflix.
Yeah. Astronova, basically, there was some kind of like mirror portal or something where they showed like Ever After High characters, and it was like, oh, there's a school full of monsters and a fairy tale. So that was made canon, that like these universes were coinciding. Like,
well, I mean,
with
they
each
did.
other.
I mean, it's just funny because it was canon, but it wasn't, because obviously Cupid came from Monster High, so she's like, why did she not tell him where she was from? Or
it had kind of always been canon, but it was kind of a swept under the rug thing up until that point. But but that just, they ended up making that a book. Another factor that is largely believed to be responsible for kind of the cheapening and budget cuts of the Ever After High products, and also in general a push for to have primarily budget dolls available, the cheaper, more affordable, non-articulated dolls. And that was Mattel's partnership and essentially business engagements with Walmart. If we needed another reason to have problems with Walmart. But
I mean, Walmart always has these like exclusives with like Monster High and Ever After High at that point. Like there's like each like event or like movie, whatever. Like Dragon Games had an exclusive Poppy O'Hare doll, and for Way to Wonderland they had a Kitty Cheshire exclusive. So it's just like Mattel was really like being promoted or like sponsored by Walmart. And what Max was gonna say was, Mattel was really pushed into this partnership where they were releasing these budget dolls, because at Walmart it's what sells. Like these aren't articulated, really cheap dolls.
They started releasing like $5 dolls, and so this was these were decisions made in collaboration with Walmart. And obviously Walmart is primarily known for, as among other things, their low prices. And which, by the way,
I mean, obviously these like really cheap dolls also made their way to other retailers too. But in general, like Walmart had the most these really super budget dolls, like the $5 dolls. But
it has essentially gotten to a point where now we're in present day. Ever After High dolls are not really on the shelves
at all, anywhere.
Literally not at all. Actually, most of our local stores, they do not have their own section at all. Not at all whatsoever. Not at Target. Not at Walmart.
We love Ever After High, and we love the content they produce.
I miss it.
Yeah, it's great. And I mean, whatever is to come, if they decide another like reboot or, come out with more additional stuff to see if people still like it, we'll support it. But at the moment, there really isn't much right now. Like even if we want to support it, there's no way of getting them. Like Max said, like their new wave of
You can't
toys.
even buy them on Amazon.
You can't. Yeah, I mean, I mean, who's gonna buy something that there's not on the shelves?
I mean, I may as well officially announce. I mean, at this point, in case it wasn't clear, I'm pretty confident, as much of an Ever After High fan as I was and am. I think it was a beautiful brand, and I love the products of it that I have. I'm pretty confident. I don't think I'm going to be purchasing any more Ever After High products or reviewing any more on this channel. I'm sorry if that disappoints anyone, but I mean, there's not even really anything left.
I mean, obviously, if they release more stuff, then sure. But at the moment, it's like you can't obtain any of them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't buy a jointless budget doll to review.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, again, like we talked about earlier, it set a standard for us that just was not upheld. And I did want to cover briefly some of the things that people commented, things they wanted to bring up. Our friend Grey School Warrior Extra, which thank you so much for commenting. he brings up that Ever After High was essentially a high-end doll line that was ultimately destroyed by retailers like Walmart, which I agree with, wanting lower price points. And you know, yeah, to meet their demands, they had no option but to reduce the cost of the dolls. And he also, this is also something, yeah, we can comment on, that he assumes lagging sales resulted in more demographic research that led to mommies saying the faces are too round, they have too much makeup, and they look too serious. Which I definitely do think we kind of touched on that briefly earlier, but I think that played a huge role as well. I think there were a lot of parents who didn't like the fact that Ever After High dolls, they looked very serious or sassy or almost like angry. And I think that's the thing, is a lot of moms and stuff like that, they wanted dolls to be happy and smiling and gleeful and stuff like that.
Pure and natural.
Grayskull also mentioned that supposedly some of the people that worked on the show at Guru, they were the ones who were essentially contracted for the animation, confirmed on Tumblr that Mattel did not renew the contract for the show, so the web series is indefinitely done. You know, I mean, I'm kind of curious, you know, he also mentions like that it kind of seems like there's a decline of people who are interested in Ever After High, like on Instagram and, you know, in terms of likes, pictures, stuff like that. I'm curious where you guys are at, so definitely comment below, you know, if you were an Ever After High fan, like what your level of interest is at this point, if you still care about it, if you still want to keep collecting, if you hope that they're going to release more new stuff in the future.
The comment we got from Never Forever she sounds pretty disappointed. She's saying she wished that they had kept the collection line more signature doll focused and less on that party line aspect. I would always agree with that. I mean, as much as I like simple toys, I think that the main big like extravagant lines was the strength.
Those were their best sellers too. They always hit #1 on Amazon.
Really?
For bestseller in dolls. They were always the bestseller in dolls when they came out, usually.
She felt that Mattel destroyed their own brand. You can't please everyone, and I felt that constant edits to the brand only made things worse. Yeah, I can see that. Like,
Well said,
staying consistent is probably important. Like, try to make Walmart happy, try to make parents happy, and then making original fans completely unhappy.
Yeah,
so.
it's a weird balance between like staying true to the brand while also trying to save money. If I'm used to eating steak, you cannot just give me a quarter of the steak. You know?
Yeah. I will say one thing I will say about Ever After High, it had limitless potential, you know, and maybe they'll sell the brand. I don't know. Or just maybe they'll like Bratz. They'll try to reboot it years from now. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
All right, so the Doll Junkie states, so she started collecting Ever After High much later than most. So she gave her story where the dolls were almost a year before I caved and bought my first. The initial first run of these dolls were spectacular, which, yeah, definitely, by far. Their accessories were the bomb, so detailed for a playline doll. I became a pretty rabid EAH collector for a while, but alas, by the time the reboot came about, they really no longer encompass the EAH dolls I fell in love with. Definitely, it's very, yeah, like, I hate to sound super negative, but yeah, it's just super jarring, the changes they made. I know early on when they cut back things, like they tried very, very hard to like make it less noticeable with some of the lines. Like
they also mentioned that the smiling molds and the molded clothing was a mistake, and I think so too, because I think it's just not the right move in general to force the doll into a certain thing. Like their old expressions, while they may seem colder, at least it's blank. Like you can kind of project your feelings onto them if kids want to play with them, but now they're just always happy, and with the clothes they can't change. It feels so limited.
Yeah. But actually, I think we should actually just jump straight to EAH Boy's comment.
Well, I want to say something about that real quick.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's just like we said, like it's so weird because like they have this standard that they've been following, like, you know, Dexter, Alexter, Hunter, they're all these boy dolls where they had real hair and they had clothing and you can interchange their outfits if you want. And then suddenly you have...
Which was a nice departure from, like, Ken.
Yeah, and then suddenly you have the Ken version come out, and that's Daring. And Daring, like, if you hold Daring next to, like, his brother, Dexter...
It's that out from my memory.
It's so different. Like, are these the
molded
same...
pants.
Are they the same, like, is it the same series? Because, like, his clothes are all molded, his pants are molded, and then his hair, it's like, it's so...
Even if I'm
different.
trying not to be a negative Nancy, like, looking back, like, oh, Daring. That was such an injustice to Daring. That was
would have been a beautiful...
That was such an in-demand character. His face was great. I loved his face. Mm-hmm. Beautiful face. But yeah, this actually, I just wanted to bring up, this ties pretty much directly into EAH Boy's comment. He mentions, you know, the same thing where it's essentially, the molded painted on clothes, that he wants dolls to be able to be versatile and change their looks. When a doll has painted legs, that's really limiting. I think that was a game changer for sure. Like we just said, it's just, if you have dolls that are no longer versatile, especially us when we were doing photography, it's like it makes them one-trick ponies. And I think that's the whole thing about the serious expression that parents might have had problems with. It makes them more versatile, I would say, for photography, display, and for play, because you can kind of imagine your own, or kind of write in your own emotions. But the problem is, if you have this, like, you know, like grinning, smiling Cheshire cat, you know, smile, and then you have this clothing that's painted on the doll, so you can't really
There's really
change.
only that one scenario.
There's really just that one situation you have to have them in. And I think that's the original intent of dolls, is, you know, it involves a lot of imagination and creativity, and you kind of strip them of that. Doll the Rage commented, should have made Hopper. One thing about this, I definitely think there are some male characters who it's a huge bummer that they never got dolls, like Sparrow. Mm-hmm. I would have loved a Sparrow doll, and they never got a Sparrow doll.
It's a big bummer because the Ever After High boys in particular were such a breath of fresh air.
It gave us a glimmer of hope, like, outside of, like, Integrity dolls, of like, oh, a nice looking male doll that isn't $1,000 for adult collectors. Yeah.
He's so cute. I still love him.
Yeah. You know, companies do what they can to try to keep brands alive. But yeah, it's tough. You know, they also mention Ever After High had so much to give to the fashion doll world. They were uniquely different and outstanding. Mattel should converse with the fans and have our feedback and unbiased opinions on the latest dolls, and discuss with us how we can repair the brand as a whole. So here's what I will tell you about that. I think I agree with that to a certain extent. But the problem with, I mean, speaking also from my experience, you know, even working corporately, it's difficult to ask customers what they want and then just apply that. That's unfortunately not, there's, you know, big business is much more complicated than that. You know, you won't necessarily be able to give people everything that they want.
And, you know, when something's struggling, as much as you love it, and as much as, like, these creators who love this, their brand, it's their baby, there's not much they can do about it. It's just, they're hemorrhaging money, and they can't just keep throwing money at it. So they did what they can, and it's just, you know, it is what it is at this point. Maybe they'll try again later, and maybe they have a better shot with a new audience later down the line. But at the moment, it's hard to see production and effort decline over and over again. This is what driving people away. It's not enticing new consumers. It's just these same people who are fans like us just getting upset and worked up the fact that these things that they fell in love with is just not getting the correct attention and love that we want, because we as fans want them to succeed and purchase these items, but just the amount of people who are fans do not equate to how much Mattel needs it to be successful.
So we can go ahead and move into our final thoughts on the series of Ever After High.
I mean, this is not a eulogy and whatnot, but at the same time, I think
it might be for us.
I mean,
But,
I'm hopeful to see if they ever, create the same magic again. And Mattel has given us a lot of things that we love, so it's not like we hate them.
No.
we love you, Mattel.
Yes,
we do.
we do. We love you because we love you, so we say what we have to say. We love you.
We're honest with you because we love you.
But yeah, Mattel has given us Ever After High, and it was a great doll line, and it's definitely what got me and actually all of us, if not just directly with Ever After High, but in general, with us into collecting
Dolls
again.
and toys,
Yeah.
really, yeah.
So it's definitely you
fostered a great appreciation.
Yeah, you took a lot of our money. So if you look back on what people like about Ever After High and you can stick to it, then you have something that worked. I like talking to Mattel for some reason, but yeah, it's just along the way it got kind of muddled and a lot of situations caused it to degrade.
The industry changed, and
but it's a time and after again, like it's something that worked in the past, with early on with Monster High with their first release and Ever After with their first release, you have these great doll lines that are so detailed and have so much personality, and so much charm. The show really helped me get into collecting these characters because I felt a connection to the show, so I bought the dolls. And the dolls were great because they're super detailed, and I love Ever After High. I want them to bring it back or have a section back at my Target and bring back Comic-Con exclusives because they were amazing.
Oh my god. Seriously, honestly, if Ever After High can only like, if they do the budget stuff, whatever, that's fine, but still have occasional, like, kind of like what Monster High is doing right now, like the occasional, like, adult collector releases or along the lines, that would be great. Then
Yeah,
we could just occasionally have nice, detailed, good packaging dolls
totally.
to enjoy. I mean, ultimately what I would like to say is regardless of the brand's future, I'm very happy it existed. I have some gorgeous dolls that to this day I still love. I have many of them, and I think they introduced something great and unique to the concept of fairy tales. They set a standard that really no other brand did, honestly, that wasn't extremely high-end.
They managed to make me care where like Barbie hadn't. I still care about Monster High, but
yeah,
it's a little different now since the reboot, I'll admit.
Like we always talk about articulation or like scans and all this. Like it's
we
something
came to expect that because of Ever After High.
Yeah,
I think.
definitely.
Yeah. I there's a part of me that if it were to just end, I could appreciate it having come and gone, because part of me would rather it kind of fade out gracefully
Die a hero
than
instead of live long enough to see yourself become a monster.
But yeah, so
It was already heading that way, so.
Yeah, I mean, granted, I'm sure, little kids and parents and all that still appreciate simple, affordable dolls. That's great, that's fine. It doesn't have to be for me or collectors like me anymore. Like, I've made peace with that. But, I still have a definite fondness in my heart for Ever After High. And yeah, we're very curious what you guys think. Hopefully we can start a discussion in the comments as well. Let us know if you are still hoping to see anything from Ever After High, if you still love them to this day and are still buying all the new stuff, if you're angry at the brand, if you're done with it, just whatever you're feeling, let us know. Start a discussion.
This is your space to relieve that burden from your
This is
shoulders.
your safe space. And we will try to respond to the comments as well. Yeah, we're very curious what you guys think. And again, we still love you, Ever After High. We wish you the best, whatever your future ends up being. And
if this is the last time we see you, take care.
Yes. This isn't goodbye, but we hope to see you again. thank you for joining us for our discussion and retrospective.
If you made this far,
Ever After High,
applaud
if you
you.
made it through the whole thing, we commend you. You're true Toy Chat fans. Yeah, so make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't. Check out links in the description for additional information, all the things we mentioned. Your best friends forever after here at Toy Chat. Hope you have an enchanting rest of your day.
Yeah, we're gonna get food.
Yes,
It's
the most
4 a.m.
enchanting place in the world, Jack in the Box. We'll see you next time.
Bye.